We have our speaker here, and she's been on stage, I think, earlier yesterday. And right now, what she will be coming to share with us is really about getting involved in open source. You ready, Regina? Well, come on stage.
Hi again. Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be co-presenting with Samson. And we are basically going to be talking about how to get involved with Gnome. Just to begin, the Gnome structure is quite different from the way we have other open source projects. So with the Gnome, we have what is called the Gnome project, which is basically what houses all our open source applications from the Gnome desktop to FlatHub. We also have the Gnome Foundation. So the foundation is in charge of managing the Gnome project. Together, the Gnome project and the Gnome Foundation makes up what we call today Gnome, sometimes called Gnome, and some call it Gnome, depending. We are all saying the same thing.
Yes, so before I start speaking, I know I was not supposed to be on stage. That was the plan. But before I go on, how many of you here uses Linux distro? Those odogus that don't want to use Mac or Windows, raise up your hand. What's your favorite distro? Like, do you use Ubuntu, Kali? Which one? Which one? Sorry? Ubuntu. Oh, wow. Looks like the canonical folks is going to be happy. Now, the interesting thing about Ubuntu is the fact that one thing you don't realize is your graphical user interface, which most people call the GNU, or in this case, the user interface, is basically called Gnome. So no matter the operating system you're using that is quite updated, you're most likely going to be familiar with this screen. So hence the reason why it's called Gnome and also the Gnome Foundation.
Yeah. So the GNOME project is made up of contributors and the technology, as you can see. As Samson has said that basically, as long as you are familiar with Linux distros, you must have been using the GNOME desktop, right? So this is like an interface of the GNOME desktop. And we have teams as well that are working within the GNOME project.
Okay. Quite interesting. I was expecting her to take this slide, but sure, I will try my best. I have some experience when it comes to being on a board in an organization, and the one thing you don't understand is every open source project that you have interaction with, remember my talk? There's always a community side of it, which is the people that manages it, people that get paid to manage this, and of course, contributors like you. But all those things need a little bit of structure. So if you notice, there's something called a foundation members. I believe I'm part of one of them, right? Okay, cool. And then those structure, then there's something called the board of director. So one of my, there's a project called Sugar Labs. I serve on the board. So one of the things is like we make sure that people are able to make some drastic change that may or may not affect the project, but again, from more of a high level. And then there's something called the community, which I'm sure Regina is going to talk about. And then there's some kind of an employee. Exactly, the executive director that sort of like get paid to run the organization itself in terms of fundraising, sort of what I'm doing right now with Oscar. And then of course, depending on how things work, the employee and the contractor obviously reports over to the executive director.
Just to add to that the board of directors are chosen by the community. So it means that all communities, if you are a board member, or rather if you are a foundation member, you are eligible to vote and be voted for within the GNOME project. So the large number of people that we have within the GNOME project is made up from the foundation members. So the GNOME project, we have the GNOME community, like I earlier said, then we have the foundation and the project. Regardless of if you are interfacing with the foundation or you're just a contributor to the project, you are part of the Gnome community, and they are the larger part of the people that makes up the Gnome project. So we'll be talking a little bit about the Flat Up project, right? So the Flat Up project is also embedded in the Gnome project, which is an angle that we would like to have more African developers. I have met a few developers that are already working with Flat Up, and I hope to have more developers in Flat Up.
Okay, interesting. One of the things that got me excited, or my first ever open source contribution, short a bit about a story. I was somewhere in JSS1, I got some games, Pro Evolution Soccer, who does that these days? Raise up your hand, cool. So I got this Linux machine, and I was so curious about running a Windows game in a Linux distribution, which was interesting. So I copied it on my hard drive. I was so excited. I ran home. Didn't want to eat. I was like, okay, I need to just run this game. And then when I played it, obviously, I ran into some bunch of errors. And then that's how I even got started in open source, by even trying to create my first app. So my first official open source contribution was me creating an application, a desktop application for an operating system called SugarLab. So that's kind of the whole vibe that is all going here, which is imagine the Flat Hub as a Play Store where you have the opportunity to build an app that can run on Gnome. Now, guess what? Imagine you build a Gnome app, and then someone is using Ubuntu, someone is using Kali, someone is using like Debian, but again, using Gnome as their default GUI or their default graphic user interface. Your applications are going to be used by a lot of persons. So just imagine that structure as you're building for Android, in this case, like how you build your Android apps, and then you put those things into the Play Store. Then no matter what device you're using, as far as it's supported, it can be able to run. And that's the whole idea of how Flat Hub, or in this case, the Flat Hub Play Store, or in this case, the Gnome default Play Store runs.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it means that any application that is developed with the Flat Hub platform is going to be available across all Linux distros. So you don't have to do like a private marketing for your application. So how do you basically get involved with Flat Hub? We have our project hosted on GitHub, and of course, we are community-driven. We are open and inclusive to ideas and how we can be better within the Gnome project. We are open to developers. We are open to those that would partake in testing the platforms, and then we are open to all sort of users, documentation, technical writers, and all of that.
Quick question. How many of you here wants to contribute to their first open source project?
Okay.
Raise your hand now. Why are you shy now? Raise. Awesome. I can see you're cool. Thank you. How many of you here has, or in this case previously, have contributed to an open source project? Cool. What about the OGs, the people they use Kali in writing terminal? What's happening now?
Okay.
I see you. Cool. Now, imagine, like I said, the goal here is to be able to make sure that no matter the level of whether you're a developer or you're a product designer, or in this case, imagine the concept of building an app, like from the process of the idea process into the deployment process, basically is the same structure. So what that means is that no matter the skills that you have, again, within the software development cycle, you can basically contribute to Flat Hub, or in this case, be part of the community. So again, you don't have to, because of the whole Kali that I'm mentioning, Hacker, or all those things, you don't have to be intimidated, because again, there are a lot of processes that can enable you to contribute to the project. And I hope after this talk, I'll be able to see like 6 pull requests in Flat Hub.
More than 6 pull requests. More than.
Should we aim for 20? What's going on now? 30?
Yes.
75, I love this guy.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier, these are the current board of directors at Gnome. You can reach out to any of them on Twitter. They are available. You have an idea, talk to us. We want to hear from you. We want to know what we can do better to serve you well. So how do you get involved with Gnome and FlatUp? So we've spoken a little bit about FlatUp. Now let's go to the Gnome desktop itself.
Okay. Remember when I said I was trying to contribute to my first open source project? So I've directly and indirectly been contributing to open source for about 15 plus years. And one of my first interactions was to build an app. Obviously, that was how the process started. Remember, there's something called coding and develop apps. You'll be like, why is there coding and when there's develop apps? It's because, again, remember, Gnome is basically a graphical user interface, which is like imagine your Mac operating system, but then is it Mojave? What do you call it? What did you call the versioning of macOS again? Look at me, Apple user. Huh? What's the latest one right now? Huh? Anyone. Yeah, the point here is you can basically contribute to an existing code base, yes, but also you can become an app developer, or in this case, you can develop an app for other people to use it. And then in terms of documentation, do we have any writers here, technical writers? Raise up your hand. What's going on? Clap for the writers. The technical writers, clap for them. Clap for them now. Now, the reason why you're clapping for them is because if you're a developer, you're running to go and build your app, and then the documentation is very crazy, obviously that's a failed attempt. So it's always very, very important that documentation is good, and that's why we love all the technical writers. I really love you guys, and you guys do an amazing job. It can't be me, but I really love you guys. Thank you. And then, of course, in terms of engagement, I don't know if Gnome use TikTok and the rest, but again, the goal is to make sure that you get community members' excitement, talking to people in the community. For a context, I'm not a board, she's on the board, but I've been in Gnome for quite some time, and I'm giving this talk. So this is part of my own engagement, contributing to the Gnome project. So that's an example. And then in terms of translation, I have, again, indirectly translated a project. I think in 2017, I led a team of like 10 people to translate an entire operating system from English to Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, and Pidgin. I think 2016 or 2017, I'm not quite sure. But then that is how amazing you can be able to do. Imagine somebody somewhere in the northern part of Nigeria using Gnome in full local language. So again, it makes it a lot easier and makes contribution accessible. And then, of course, how to get involved, gnome.org/get-involve. And I hope you're going to contribute. Now you look at me. You will contribute, ba?
Yes, they have to. Okay, so these are other links that you can use to get involved with FlatUp that we spoke about earlier. You can take a picture of this. You can get us at the discourse forum. We have a metrics channel, and also you can engage with FlatUp users on Mastodon. There are followership on FlatUp apps on Twitter. Just to add that, I met someone that is working with FlatUp yesterday.
Wow, who's
and
the person?
I was so excited. I don't know if he's here, but I was so excited to see the guy.
Where's the FlatUp person? Are you here?
Where's the FlatUp guy that met me yesterday?
Yeah.
Where's he?
There's somebody here already. Stand up, please. Stand up. Let's all clap for him.
Up. Yeah. So I was so glad to find that we have developers that are actually developing Linux-based app in Africa. And also, these are channels to come to GNOME. There is Discourse, there's GitLab, and there's Wiki. We might not be able to cover everything here, but we have a booth, and you can come and ask more questions after this talk. So let's look at programs and events on GNOME. Yeah, we have programs that get me excited. That means we also partake on outreaching, and we have program coordinators for these programs. You can see their name, Christy Pogri and Felipe Bogas. You can actually follow them on Twitter, ask a question, they'll be willing to help you. We had a Twitter space last month where Felipe was discussing about GSOC and how basically you can be part of the GSOC program. We also have Google Season of Doc, and we have the university outreach. To be honest, like I was speaking to some people that was talking to me, we need representatives that will basically champion some of these projects. For instance, we need representatives that can champion university outreach on GSOD. Maybe from there we can begin to build African mentors within GNOME, and to be easy for us to basically thrive in this space.
You should stay, wait in the evening. There's a panel for Google Summer of Code and Google Season of Doc if you're interested in getting your first $7,000 or whatever you want to do.
Yes.
So just wait for the panel. I can see all of you now. I can see you guys.
So we have events as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, again, Oscar Fest is one of them. So Oscar Fest is an event, and then Gnome has a couple events. Again, there's Gnome Africa, Gnome Asia Summit, and of course, Guadec, which I think is happening next month.
Next month, yeah, at Riga. And honestly, to be honest, I don't feel that this picture has done a lot of justice. So, but basically, we are actually looking forward to more developers coming from this space to attend our conferences and basically help us know what is happening around here. We want to know and how we can help you as well. Thank you very much. Please join us at the booth if you have any question.